Secretary of State of Georgia and this phone call with the president. Now, the biggest problem that comes up here, and it's amazing because he was trying to be so squirrely in an interview that he did on Fox News, the Secretary of State. You know, he's just dead wrong and clearly was involved in leaking the tape that he didn't know was actually being recorded. I'm not sure I fully believe that, but whatever. That's neither here nor there. When you read it, now, what's amazing about this whole thing is this is a legal discussion. And the media mob does what they always do. They take everything out of context. Now, in the course of this confidential call, you know, now that they're probably going to be facing their own lawsuits, secretly recorded, secretly released. This was a confidential legal settlement discussion about Georgia election results. The president is on the call. All the lawyers are on the call. You know, the Secretary of State is on the call. And then the mob and the media, they take out one line. Well, I only need 11,000 more votes. But the president was laying out the case in a confidential settlement discussion where all of the vote fraud took place. And his comment clearly about the 12,000 votes, in other words, the differential in terms of victory and defeat, he said it was minuscule. So he was making it proportional to his overarching theme and discussion throughout the entirety of this call. For example, let me put together parts that point out that the media purposely took out of context what the president was saying to turn it into something nefarious. By the way, criminal defense attorney of 50 years, Alan Dershowitz, said very clearly, Trump is entitled as a citizen to say, I want to find the votes. I want you to find votes that weren't counted. I want you to find votes that were cast against me that shouldn't have counted. And that was part of the settlement agreement call. And he's saying he's been saying it for months publicly, which he has, and you'll recognize it here.
We have anywhere from 250 to 300,000 ballots were dropped mysteriously into the rolls. Much of that had to do with Fulton County, which hasn't been checked. We think that if you check the signatures, a real check of the signatures going back in Fulton County, you'll find at least a couple of 100,000 of forged. Another tremendous number. We're going to have an accurate number over the next 2 days in the 50s of thousands. And that's people that went to vote and they were told they can't vote because they've already been voted for. And it's a very sad thing. It's much more than the number of 11,779. That's the current margin is only 11,779. Brad, I think you agree with that, right? That's something I think everyone, at least that's the number that everyone agrees on. But that's the difference in the votes. We had, I believe it's about 4,502 voters who voted, but who weren't on the voter registration list. So it's 4,502 who voted, but they were not on the voter registration roll, which they had to be. You had 18,325 vacant address voters. They had the address was vacant, and they're not allowed to be counted. That's 18,325. Smaller number, you had 904 who only voted where they had just a PO, a post office box number. And they had a post office box number, and that's not allowed. You had out-of-state voters. They voted in Georgia, but they were from out of state, of 4,925. You had absentee ballot sent to vacant. They were absentee ballots sent to vacant addresses. They had nothing on them about addresses. That's 2,326. You have drop boxes where the box was picked up and not delivered for 3 days. So all sorts of things could have happened to that box, including, putting in the vote that you wanted. So there are many infractions, and the bottom line is many, many times the 11,779 margin that they said we lost by. I mean, the state is in turmoil. If you took the minimum numbers were many, many times above the 11,779. And many of those numbers are certified, or they will be certified, but they are certified. Those are numbers that are there, that exist, and that beat the margin of loss. They beat it, I mean, by a lot. And people should be happy to have an accurate count instead of an election where there's turmoil.
I mean, it couldn't be any more clear, but that is how corrupt the mob is in this country. The president, in a private call and for a consent legal agreement, laying out the case of how many votes were lost and just laying out the perspective, many more than the margin of difference in what determined the outcome. He wasn't asking for them to manufacture votes. He was pointing out where he believed fraud took place in the state. Never mind the idiotic consent agreement of the Georgia Secretary of State. 800-941